Okay, Taryn, we got 25 or 31 people in the meeting, so I think let's crack on. There's a short introduction anyway, and I don't want to overrun because I know other people have probably got a 1 o'clock or whatever. Firstly, thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm joining you out of Gauteng today, where it's freezing. So battling to stay warm. Thanks for joining us. Today's session is really just an introduction to a big change that we are deploying to PPO in about 5 to 6 weeks. And we wanted to take some of the key clients who've got large user bases, who have gone through some change management activities or have had challenges in the past with adoption. And we just wanted to give you an opportunity to be involved with a beta program. So what it means technically is that we are going to deploy on your request and decision this upgrade to your version of PPO. And for those of you that are administrators, you can deploy it on your live instance or your train instance. You can deploy it on your train instance first for a week, and if you like it, you can deploy it to your live instance. On the day of deployment in July, all clients will get the same version and everyone will be on the same version. But we're giving you an opportunity of 4 or 5 weeks before we deploy it to the wider market to see the change, to experience the change, to get used to the change, to give us any feedback of stuff that we need to tweak or change so that we're able to change it. We just wanted to give you the heads up, and we chose a couple of key selected clients, and you guys that are joining us today come out of that client base. So thank you for your time. Just want to make it clear, at the end of the session, somebody will contact you to say, would you like us to deploy this to your live environment, your training environment, or either or both, and then we'll switch it on for you guys. Okay, Taryn will be taking us through the presentation today. I'm sure most people know Taryn. Taryn's been with PPO for 10 years now. She was a partner of ours before. She was a client of PPO before, so I think she's got a 15-year involvement with PPO. So she's going to be presenting the presentation today. I just wanted to give you a very brief overview of where we're going. So for those of you that have been PPO clients for many years, and I'm sure a lot of the people on this call have been, we've been trying to move PPO, the product, quite fast, quite quickly in the last year or so. So you would have noticed, if you don't already follow the blog or do those type of things, you would have noticed quite a few product enhancements coming out quite quickly this year. I've put my foot down and accelerated on the product development of PPO to try and move the product forward quicker than maybe in the past, so that we can get the functionality that we want to deploy out to the users quicker. It's a double-edged sword where a lot of you are corporates, you've invested a lot of time and money in PPO, you've got your user base stable and they know the product and they like the product, but now we want to change it. So we've got to make small incremental changes that it doesn't throw the apple cart over, but we can't leave the product stagnant for too long because we need to keep moving with new things that happen in the market, new requirements client has, and those type of things. So one of the big changes we've made over the last year and a half is widgets. When PPO was initially built, it was built a lot on lists. So those of you that have been PPO users for many years know that you go from one list to the item, and then you edit it, then you update it, then you go to a next list and the next list. And PPO was a lot of pages of lists that the users navigated. We're moving away from that into what's called, in our terminology, a widget world, which will give us the ability to work within widgets. So we want to move away from having lists of everything and move more to widgets. So this change that we're going to show you today is the step that we need to take in order to move into the widget world. So the release we're actually doing internally is called the table widget. So it's a widget that looks like the tables and operates a bit like the tables, but it's totally re-engineered, re-architected to rather use a widget. And what it'll allow us to do in the future is things like this, where you could have a table widget, left-hand side, something that you know, but graphical widgets on the right-hand side, which could be for different components. And the number of widgets we can develop and the type of widgets we can develop are infinite. So on the next screenshot, for example, you'll see a whole bunch of widgets, like top left-hand corner, a feed widget, which can see who updated what, when, and what did they say. A calendar widget, bottom right-hand corner. A focus widget, top or middle right-hand side, where you can actually favorite certain things and they could be part of a widget that you could get to much quickly. Top right-hand corner are key metric widgets, where you could have a key metric that you want to track and have a widget. So we're moving away from a very structured table-based orientated system to the ability to have these widgets and the widgets will become used throughout the system. Currently, your homepage, those of you that know it, it's a table of certain sections, and you can't even move the sections around, you can't change them. Going forward, the vision is that your homepage could become a lot more like this, where you have a table maybe, bottom in the middle, but that you also have 2 or 3 graphs or some key indicators. The reports and the dashboards will also start to adopt a lot more of the widget look and feel, where you can then have various widgets. And you can see here we have different size widgets, and we can line them on the screen, and that customizability will then be in the hands of the users, where you'd be able to tailor the screen for your audience or for your own personal usage a lot more around the use of these widgets. So these are all to come. These are things that we're working on in the background, ideas, concepts, betas that we have running on the side. But we want to move away from having this core structure of those tables doing everything and have a lot more free flowing. If you're an executive, seeing some of the key graphs would be a lot more useful on your homepage than just a list of risks, tasks, and projects. So this is the future that we're moving to. We will have these widgets, and we'll be engaging with clients to say, what type of widgets are you interested in? Graphical widgets, feed widgets, calendar widgets, Gantt chart widgets, indicator widgets, whatever they may be. But that's really the big change that we make. But in order to do that, we have to break away from the table structure that we have in PPO, which is sort of built into the core product, which is the move that we want to deploy in the next 5 to 6 weeks. We've been using this version of PPO that we're going to deploy to you for months now, and we wanted to get to a point where we took it out to the beta clients and then out to the other clients. So I want to hand over to Taryn. She's going to take us through the changes. The reason we're doing this with you is to give you an idea of what's changed so that you're conscious of it, that when users start asking questions or there's impacts that you're aware of it. So I think probably best to let Taryn go through the presentation, and then we'll have some questions at the end. If you do have questions in the meantime, please pop them into the chat. Myself and Lindy will try and address them. We'll try and point to other stuff. Anything that Taryn will get to in the presentation, we'll leave for her, and then we'll have some questions at the end. The presentation that we're using today, we'll also share with everybody afterwards. So the screenshots and those things will be there. And then we are recording this webinar, that if you do want a copy of it to share it with a colleague who's not here, or show it to somebody who maybe should have been here in hindsight that you now see, happy to share it with you as well. So if there's any no immediate questions, I'm going to open up for Taryn. We're not muting everybody's mics or controlling it like that. We want it to be fairly free form, but I think let's let Taryn talk through it, and then we'll answer any questions. Are there any questions before I hand over to Taryn? Everybody good? Okay, Taryn's okay, there's some thumbs up there. Okay, so Taryn, I think over to you. And then if you do have questions or comments, pop them in the chat. Myself and Lindy, who I'm sure all of you know, we'll respond on the side to any of those things while Taryn takes us through.
Okay, thanks, Guy, and thanks everyone for joining. I'm just going to stop sharing my video. I think you've all seen what I look like now, and give me a minute just to switch screens. Okay, so I think the most important thing that you'd see from today's session. Yeah.
I'm just seeing a bunch of cameras.
Okay, give me 1 second. And let's see. How about now, Guy?
Much better.
Okay, perfect. So you can all see my screen.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I think the most important thing is for everyone to see the opportunities that this has created for the future. We're really excited about these changes because of what's to come. A lot of the changes that you're going to see probably seem really simple, immaterial. You're not seeing immediate value from them, but they are important because they do lay the foundation for those future widgets that you've seen a bit of. So I'm going to start with some of the simple changes. Standardized formatting is an example of those simple changes. What I've got here on screen is two instances so that we can compare the features from old and new side by side. The new is skinned in the blue and green, while the old is we've got the blue and yellow. So starting with costless, simple formatting, what I'll be demonstrating is now the change where we've aligned column headers with the values in those columns. It's really simple, but you'll see it immediately where the column header is right aligned to the value in that field. So this is the new compared to the old. You'll see that the column header is not aligned in the same way, where it's left aligned there, the header, versus the value in the column being right aligned. Again, it seems like a really simple change, but what this allows us to do at some point in the future is to introduce formatting on cost records like this, where we would support multi-currency on a cost record level. Traditionally, if you've been using PPO and you've got multi-currency, you would have a separate entity where you're managing exchange rates there, whereas this feature, this enhancement, lends itself to us being able to have multi-currencies within a single project. So different currencies at a different cost level. What we've also recently done, and I'm sure you probably at the time didn't think it was that much of a big change, is where we introduced color-coded custom list. So if you recall, some of you may have it, may not have it. I'll quickly just demonstrate. You'll see that things like project phase is color-coded. So you've got a color-coded custom list. A change like this allows us to be able to color-code numeric type fields. So where you've got variances, you'd be able to color code a positive variance in shaded black or a negative variance shaded red. And of course, formatting. So I mean, formatting on your date fields as an example, region specific date fields, or even region specific numeric values for how you show it within your region. If you think to dates as an example, different regions maybe go year, month versus day, month, year. So those kinds of opportunities have been created with the use of these kinds of formats. The formatting that I've just mentioned, I just want to quickly demonstrate the opportunity that it's also created for us. We are in the process of testing by an alpha release one of these formatting changes. You'll be able to see a new feature probably coming in the next couple months around conversations. If you've been using PPO, you know PPO works really well at providing structured feedback on project-related items like issues, risks, etc. You know, in order to be able to maintain and report on these items, users, allocated risk owners, issues owners, etc., would need to physically edit this item, update it, provide an action response, change the follow-up date, maybe change the status. It didn't lend itself to more of that unstructured feedback that you're starting to see more and more of in recent times. So if you think of chats that are happening via Teams, or you think of WhatsApp chats that are happening outside of the project world, this new conversation feature allows us to be able to bring that unstructured feedback into your project system. So now your structured feedback will still be there together with the unstructured feedback, now all within the same tool. So an example, there's a issue item that we've got here for call center capacity. I'm not attached to this issue in any way, but I think I've got an idea on how we can address this. I'll just quickly demonstrate that formatting that I mentioned. You'll be able to see immediately, I've got my conversation started, and in a few seconds is that date formatting that I mentioned earlier. Traditionally, you'd see last updates, it's time and date stamped with 23rd of May 2022. You would see that form of update. This change around standardized formatting gives us the ability to introduce friendly timestamps at some point in the future. So this is still hot off the press. I mean, it's still in development. We're going through our alpha release, but it is something that you can expect to see that has been made possible with the introduction of these standardized formats that we've introduced. Okay, so moving along, I want to just show one more example of how the standardized formats have been implemented. I'm just going to navigate to health indicator list so you can quickly see another example of that. And this is where column headers are center aligned with RAG indicator fields. It's really visible here where you can see RAG indicator center aligned with the value in the field versus the old way where you can see that the header is cut off because the alignment is inconsistent. So here's another example of that. Okay, so standardized formatting. I am quickly going to jump to the next set of standardization that we've got in place, and I'm going to navigate to a task list to do that. Okay, that takes us to standardized paging. So standardized paging is something that we've been building up to for a while. Standardization has been part of our communications in our recent enhancements. You might have seen it when I did my navigation to this list page. You can see via my projects menu, there is structured grouping. You can clearly see RAID with risks, issues, decisions, time and cost groupings for the related entities underneath that heading versus the old way where your entities are just ordered alphabetically from A to T, approvals, benefits, etc. This was a change introduced probably within the last 2 or 3 months via the configurables project menu. If you haven't seen it, if you don't have it, I think Lindy might have just posted something in the chat that talks to how you can get this implemented. If you're interested, either log a ticket or reach out to your success manager and they can help you structure your project menu based on the knowledge areas that you practice or how your structure runs. That can then be implemented via a configurable menu. Okay, so back to standardized paging. For all list pages in PPO, the results that are shown are determined by your list page settings. So that's typically set under your preferences, and you can see you've got a list page size and the number of items that will be shown in your list is maintained there. And that's done on a user by user basis. So that each user individually can determine the size of their list. So if I were to look at a list page here, I just want to make sure that we're comparing apples with apples. So you'll see on a task list, traditionally, if your list page has been set to 100 items, the paging will then be shown on the page header. So here you can see tasks 1 to 8 in terms of the pages that are available, and this is how you would navigate to the next page. With the new enhancement around standardized paging, you will notice that the paging is being moved in line with the action buttons that we've got there. It's more prominent where it shows the page that you're on. So it's visible, clearly visible that I'm on page 1 of the 739 items. And I have now got next and previous buttons that would help for easier navigation. So if I clicked on next, you can see previous now becomes available for me to click. It's now clickable and I can see I'm on page 2. You'll also see that at any point I can see 6 pages available to me at any time. And as I move, you'll see the items, the pages that become available will now appear. Old way, all 8 pages are visible and I would click and I would have these angle brackets to navigate to the next page. How I would know what page I'm on is the number of the page would be underlined. So you'll see there's immediate changes. Again, it also might not seem like it is, really valuable in terms of the change that we made, but you'll see it just now in what this allows us to be able to do just now. So we've introduced this ability to set your preferences per page, so per list. I'll show you a quick example of this, but we will talk about it more just now. I can now set my list page size not as a global setting anymore. I can do this on a per project base, per list page basis. So for my task list, I can set my page size to 100 items, and I could go back to my project list and have a different page size. So I could have on my projects page a list size of 50 items. So the results that will be shown to me will be based on my setting for that particular page. So that's the opportunity that it's created for us, is that we can now manage our lists on a per entity basis, and then we'll move on to the next feature. So just give me one sec. Okay, so the next change. So this change that we're going to talk about now is one that I'm really excited about. It makes life so much easier. So you'll see it very clearly here. If I were to filter or want to apply any filters, I would have to select it, and it wouldn't always be clear to me what filters these are. This new change is the introduction of filter icons. So you can see immediately that a global filter has an icon of the world, so you can see that there. A personal filter is shown with a single person, and a shared filter is shown with multiple people there. So you can clearly distinguish between the type of filters that are available to you for application. If we look at the old way, you'll see there would just be a list of filters, and a user wouldn't know what's a personal filter that they've set up themselves, what's a global filter, what's a shared filter. It does also lead to some messy filters or a messy filter list, because you're not really sure whether it's a shared filter or one that you've created yourself. So that's a change that I think would be really useful. We'll see a little bit more about what this has created for us. We are going to talk about filters and filter controls just now, but just give me a second to get to that. We're just going to talk about working with list pages in a little bit more detail. So I'll demonstrate it to you now. Give me 1 second to just disable this filter. Again, comparing apples with apples, we're looking at exactly the two list, project list. Here, you will notice that we've got a global filter icon here. So this global filter, you'd have this toggle that when it is shaded gray, the global filter is being applied. So you would know that all of your archive projects that have been marked as inactive are being filtered out. If you want to get those projects back, you'd need to click on the toggle, disable that filter, and then it would bring, let me just take that one off, then you would see your full list of projects, regardless of whether they active or inactive. So that's how you would do that previously. So you would click on the filter, click on the toggle, it's shaded gray. That immediately tells you that your global filter to only show active projects has been applied. In the new way, new enhancements, you will immediately notice that that global filter toggle has been removed, and a only active projects filter pull has been applied. So you wouldn't need a global filter to do that. You would just have this automatically applied for only active projects. If you click on that filter list, you immediately then see that that is the global filter. And if you wanted to change it and look at any of the other filter options, you'd be able to click on that filter and it would apply your active projects. So the thing that this does, and I think is really useful, is that in the old way, if you wanted to go and look for a risk list as an example, and you wanted to look at all risks across your portfolio, regardless of whether the project is active or inactive. If I did that and I just navigated to my risk list, I now only see my active risks. I would have to disable that toggle. I would see all of my risks that are now there, but I'm still not seeing it for my archive projects. If I wanted to do that, I would first have to go to my project list, disable this filter first, then go to my risk list, and then I would be able to see it. Well, luckily I don't have any items there, but that would have been the process that you would have followed. Now, in the new way, what I would need to do, sorry, just give me 1 second. I could navigate to that risk list, and you will see as a default, I have 2 global filters applied. The risk global filter as well as the project global filter. If I wanted to see everything, I would just take away that filter and it shows me everything. I wouldn't need to do anything on the project list first. I can maintain it directly on that risk list. So any other entity that I navigated to, so if I went to issues as an example, the global filter that would be applied would always be the 2 filters that I had set up. So previously I'd navigated here and taken it away, so it remembered my preferences. But the concept is that every list page that you go to, as a default, you would have your project filter applied, your global project filter applied, as well as the issue global filter applied to that page. So I think that might be one that will take a little getting used to, but it does improve the way in which you navigate on the page. Okay, so we will spend a little bit more time talking about filters as I move to the next topic, which is around the usability improvements, which you'll see immediately, especially when you're applying filters. So I'm going to demonstrate it for you again and compare the old to the new. So in this example, you can see on the old example, if I were to select a filter, so maybe I want to select only active projects. If I wanted to apply another filter immediately, like phase, and then apply another one, I've got to wait for the page to load before I could do that. So I don't know if you noticed there was that page jump as part of implementing these filter settings. So there you see it, the page jumps a bit. With the new usability improvements that we've got, you'll notice that that doesn't happen. So I could start applying filters. So I could say phase, choose executing. You've got the introduction of a spinner and the page results show. So I could continue to add filter items, could go to the next one, and I don't have to wait for that jump on the page before I could start adding more of these filter items. So that is in our effort to improve the usability. It really does open the door to a lot more of the features that we've got. Another example of that would be at some point in the future, you will be able to filter, set multiple filters for custom list value as an example. So let's say I wanted to be able to see department being information technology as well as department being project office. These kinds of changes that we've introduced will open the door for those things to happen. Part of this change, which you can already start doing, which is not something that you can do today, is to apply multiple filters. So let's say I wanted to be able to see active projects, and from my filter list, that the filters I have available to me, I also want to apply active non-admin projects. And then I want to apply another filter that says non-admin projects only. So you see that filter's applied. And I wanted to go even further and add an additional one for my projects. So you'll see that I could apply any number of the filters available to me to my list, and I would be able to get results. In the old way, or what you used to, if I were to attempt to do that, I've got a list of these filters available. My projects are all the same ones that I've applied now. If I attempted to go active projects, and add another filter that's available in this list, like what did I have next? Active non-admin. If I did that, it immediately replaces the filter that I had there, allowing me to only apply one filter at a time. So comparing the old to the new, the ability to apply multiple filters that are available in my filter list versus only one filter at a time. This change laid the foundation for us to introduce an enhancement that's actually coming out next week. So you're hearing about it first. I'll quickly demonstrate what it is, and it's probably going to be one that the admins are going to love. So it's the ability to create a personal filter. So I'm quickly going to create it just so that you see how it would work. Where project health is not green. So give me 1 second. So as an admin, I would be creating filters all the time. So you'd be creating filters for the use and reports. You playing around with list pages, and you find one that you think would be useful to the rest of your users. You've created it as a personal filter, but to make it available to all of your other users, you would have to go and recreate it as a shared filter. So I've just created this one as a personal filter that says project health is not green. So now I've got a list of all of my red and amber projects, but I realized that this would be useful to everyone. Now, as an admin, I've got the ability to promote to shared, and this would immediately become a shared filter. So just before I do that, I want to show you in the list, project health is not green. You see it there. It's a personal filter. I think it's useful. Other users will get value from it. I want to promote it to a shared filter. Immediately, if I go to this list, that very filter is now being promoted to shared. So I know administrators, I've done it many times, either intended for something to be a shared filter, they set it up as a personal one by mistake, they've got to go and recreate it, forget to delete the personal one, then they've got a messy list, and then they've got 2 filters in the list and they're not sure whether it's a personal filter, a shared filter, so then they don't even want to delete it. They just end up with this long list of messy filters. So that's an example of the changes that we've made to filtering has made possible. So we've now introduced this change. You'll be notified of it next week sometime. So look out for the comms around that. And it's the ability to create those filters and promote it to shared filters. Okay, so I've been talking a lot about the list pages, the changes that we've been making, the widgets. One of the most important things that I think you'll find from this table widget is the settings gear icon. So previously, this gear icon that you had and that you're used to seeing gave you the ability to specify the columns that were shown in the list. So as an example, you can see that what is shown in my list is the code, the name, the phase, the project health, and you can see that through those columns that have been selected. So if you wanted to add an additional column, so maybe I want to add priority. So if I click on priority, I would have to select the column, apply the changes, and you would then see the introduction of that new column. So here's my priority column there. I had no ability to order the columns that you see, so the way in which they're shown. So if I wanted priority to be my second or third column, I couldn't do that. If I wanted to restore this to the original defaults, to the columns that were initially set up, the only way that I could do that was to deselect everything, click on apply the changes, and then I would be restored to the default columns that have been set up for the list page. This is no longer the case with the new gear icon that we have on list pages. So you would have seen it just now when I showed you the list page size setting. So that's there on every list page for you to determine the number of results or the number of rows that you see on your list. Previously, it was set to just 100. You couldn't go more than that. You now have the ability to set it to 200. So your list page size can now be increased to 200. The next things that you could do with this new icon is the way in which you add columns is slightly different. So I had added a priority column just now. Now I would use this column selection field, type the column that I want. You see it drops immediately to the bottom. I can drag it, drag and drop. Can you believe it? Yes, we've got drag and drop. So I can move this column to where I want it placed on the screen. So I can set the column to go just after project manager, and I can save, and you'll see, let me just quickly get rid of that my priority is now next to project. Going back to that icon, you'll see that I could add as many columns as I wanted, change the order, move project manager around, drag and drop. You see that's now possible. To restore to defaults is now just one click as opposed to the 2 or 3 steps that I followed. I could click on restore defaults and it immediately restores the columns that we initially set up by the admins. Okay, so drag and drop is something that we've been hearing more and more about. The drag and drop on this gear icon gives us the ability to introduce drag and drop in other areas in PPO. So if you think about maybe Kanban type reporting that project officers are now doing with the introduction of agile ways of work. So being able to drag and drop now on these columns will allow us to be able to do that at some point in the future. The other thing is last update. So you see that last update is not a column that you could previously get rid of. It was always there as a default. It's not an actual column that you can see. You couldn't get rid of it. This now gives us the ability to get rid of something like last updated. If I were to save it, you can now see that that last updated column is not available in your list. How to get rid of columns is also a lot easier than it was before. You just click on the cross and that gets rid of your columns. And that's it. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly restore defaults so that we're always comparing old and new the same way. And that then takes us to the next bit that I'd like to cover. Give me 1 second just to get there. I think this is one of the biggest changes where it brings together a lot of the features that we've been covering through this demo today, as well as some of the latest enhancements that have come out over the last couple of months. And that is our Gantt view. So just going to quickly navigate to a task list so that we are on the same page. Okay, so task list. The Gantt view previously, so if we were to navigate to a Gantt view, we would have to select a project. So I'm going to choose Business Architecture Blueprint as my demo project. And to get to my Gantt, you would see that I would have to go click on View Gantt. And that would take me to my Gantt view. If I needed to import tasks, the only way in which I could do it is to go back to my project. So I'd have to click on View Project, go to my project, look for the Import Task button from the project view screen, navigate down to the tasks table, click on Import Tasks. The new change, I just want to select the same project. From a task list, I now have import task available to me there. If I navigated to my Gantt chart, I now have actions import task available to me there as well. So I don't have to be on the project view page to be able to do that. I think one of the changes that I've neglected to mention is around our action buttons. You would have noticed that as I've been navigating, comparing the old to the new, the way in which these actions are shown is slightly different to what you're used to. So you can see that the action buttons that I've got available, change, view task list, import task, view Gantt charts, is not the same in the way in which we have it here. View and things like view project task list have been moved to a secondary button, and you'll see the actions is now more intuitive with whatever you're trying to perform. We'll get back to the Gantt now. I just want to quickly cover it for you so that you can see that. So if I were on an issue list as an example, so let's again compare apples with apples. So if I'm on an issue list, you can see my buttons, add, and then I've got an action button with actions available from the drop down, and I've got a secondary button for view project. Old way, you can see add. Under my actions button, I've got edit, delete, move, view project. So immediately noticeable view project, move to a secondary button. Actions, you will see that the available actions is dependent on the action that I could be able to or should be able to perform. In this option or in this scenario, only one option is clickable, and that's edit. In this, all of them are available. The new change, the availability of the actions is more intuitive, so you can see that if I were to click on edit, it's going to take me to a multiple edit screen. If I were to select an item, you'll see the actions available to me change. Because an item has been selected, this multiple selector, I could now delete, edit, or move. So depending on what you're doing, the actions then that are available change. Whereas in this scenario, I could click on delete even though I haven't selected an item. I would be stopped by an error message that says I need to select items before I can do that. That has now been changed where that action wouldn't even be available for you to perform unless you had already selected an item. Okay, so it's important for you to see that on various pages, these action buttons have been adjusted to what actions you can perform. So going back to this view project, starting to get to navigate to the Gantt, I just want to do exactly the same thing on the same side. You'll see from the task section, you'll see I've got action buttons there for tasks. Let's get there. So you see I've got add, then I've got my actions button, view task list, import task, view Gantt. This example, they're exactly the same. If I were to click on view Gantt, you'll see the filters that I had just covered is now there. So 2 filters always applied, 2 global filters to only show me my active projects, as well as my global filter to only show me my open tasks. So every list page that you navigate to will by default show you 2 global filters, ones that I just mentioned for active projects and open tasks. And then of course, the project that you've selected. Immediately noticeable, what you can see is that the Gantt is now a task Gantt versus a project Gantt. Old way, you can only view a Gantt for one project at a time. It was never possible to see a Gantt view of multiple projects. If I were to just cross this out, immediately you'll see I could now, if I wanted to, get a portfolio Gantt. So I'd be able to see a Gantt view for all the projects within my portfolio and use the applicable filters if I wanted to filter the data even further, like, showing just certain projects or projects where the health is not green, and I could adopt any one of those existing filters that I've already used to show me a Gantt of those projects. Okay. The next thing that you'll see is zooming in and out. Before, that was done via an action, where now you'd use this little slider that we've got there. That gives you the ability to zoom in and out. So it's a more interactive experience that you've got for viewing the Gantt. I just want to go back to just viewing it for a single project. And hopefully you'd also see that in viewing the Gantt, what's an additional enhancement that you notice, and this has also come out a couple of months ago, which I guess that when it came out, it wasn't really valuable. People didn't see the opportunities that it created, was the introduction of avatars. So now with the introduction of avatars, on the Gantt view itself, you can see the responsible person for those activities next to the activity. So avatars, if you haven't used it or haven't had your users uploading their avatars, this is one way in which it adds value to your Gantt view reporting. You now see the face of the person that's responsible for that task. Okay, so the next thing that we'll look at, so I mentioned the action buttons. Now you can import from the Gantt view as well as from a task list, where previously it was always only possible to import from your project view page. We've covered the zooming in and out. You can see the paging now is available to you. My list page size is currently set to 20. On this individual page, I've now got a gear icon setting there, and the settings are slightly different. So list page size, so this one, maybe it makes sense to show 10 or 50 or 100. You know, you can determine on a page by page basis what that list page size would be. You've got the ability to drop columns. You'll see that this settings gear icon is slightly different to the ones on the other list pages, because you've got the ability to have your columns, and these would be your traditional columns for your list, as well as the columns that you want to specify to be shown on the Gantt. So quickly going back, just so that you know exactly what I'm talking about. So here is another feature that I'm covering as I'm doing this, is a slider, so I can drag. We've mentioned drag and drop before. This is an example of that drag and drop. Another example of drag and drop that you would have probably seen recently is the ability to drag and drop documents. So the way in which you upload your documents is also done with drag and drop. So you're already starting to see that these drag and drop features are coming through more and more. So I've just dragged my Gantt view, I've taken it out of view, and here are my columns. So this gear icon, where I've got a column selector here, is used to select these columns that I'm showing you here on the right hand side. So I've got name, responsibility, actual progress. So as a user, you can determine the columns you've got to the left of the Gantt, as well as the columns that are shown on the right. So going back, I want to bring that back into view. The columns that are shown here. So here you can see as a default, it's showing me plan, progress information, as well as responsibility. So let's say, so I've got plan, start, and end date. So maybe I wanted to compare this to my baseline, and I want to be able to set the baseline start and the baseline end date. If I were to apply this, you would immediately see that I've got additional data here, additional information. So you can see that this project has slipped. This dark gray line here is my baseline information. If I hover over here, it looks as if this project should have started on the 5th of May, but its planned start date has now been adjusted to start on the 1st of June. So here you see baseline dates, baseline start and end versus the current planned start and end. So on my Gantt view, that is now possible by setting my baseline fields. I could change them to be something different if I wanted. So I could show if I had actual information, actual start and end, and I could be comparing my planned information with actual information, and that would be visible there. What I could also do is show my critical path. So if I immediately see, so let's just do this and zoom using my new zooming slider there, you can see the activities on the critical path are highlighted in red. Going back to that, if I were to restore all of these defaults, it goes right back to what we started with. You'll notice, comparing old to new, the today line is shown here with this yellow bar here versus the new way that I could see the today line with this little orange bar there. So let's just do that again. So there's the today line. I can also now see the actual dates when I move my cursor. So if I move my mouse, you'll see the actual dates of these things, which in the past it was difficult to do. You'd have to hover over there, read all that information to work out the exact dates. Whereas now I can just do this with my mouse and hover over and it'll show me the actual dates. The other thing that I can also do is hold my mouse down. Let me just do this again. Hold my mouse down and move my page as I needed to. So there I can do this. So just by clicking and holding, I can move my page, the right side of the Gantt, and that then moves. Okay, so that then I think brings me to the end of the Gantt view changes, but what it does also do, so if you haven't thought about it, it will give us the opportunity at some point in the future to split screens the way in which we've done it here. So the introduction of other widgets in the future will allow us to split those screens accordingly. So if you may be on a project view page, or if you want to split the screen in reporting, that kind of thing would then be possible with the introduction of a change like this. And I think that is it. Guy, Lindy, I think I've covered everything, hopefully. If there are any changes that I haven't touched on, just remind me so that I can quickly cover them, but I think I've done so.
Taryn, I believe you've covered them all. We do have a PowerPoint which Taryn will share. I don't know if you can just flip it up there, Taryn.
Yeah, I can. Give me 1 second.
So this is just aimed at the administrators or the trainers or the people maintaining your content. So all the changes that Taryn is taking you through now. You got the cameras up again, Taryn?
Oh, goodness.
What happens with 3 of those screens there?
Let me do this again.
Okay, so this PowerPoint we'll share with everybody. It's just a documented sort of, this is the old, this is the new, this is the old, this is the new. You can just show 1 or 2 of the pages, Taryn, I think, just that they get an idea for it. So it's that type of format where you will show you the new and the old. I think the key message here is that this is an important step we need to take to move PPO forward. I think we've showed you how we can use this functionality. And while we don't think these are massive changes, they do definitely impact, you know, the filtering, the archiving, the global filters and those type of things definitely impact on how users will experience it. But it gives us a massive step forward in where we can go with the product going forward. So we have to take this step first, so that we can get to the future steps. So we've done it incrementally, that we take the step, get the users comfortable, and then move forward. PPO is a significant user base, which means we can't move too fast too quickly. Otherwise, we're going to frustrate our users and our clients. But on the same point, everyone says we need to move faster. So it's this double-edged sword. PPO has always been very good to structure and organize your project data. You know, the data model is sound, the architecture is sound. That's always been very good. You enter an amount once, it's used throughout. You don't have to duplicate it. But on the same side, there's this more and more need for individual filtering mechanisms to change the screens, to have a different look, to provide more non-structured information. And those are some of the things we're doing. So, you know, while PPO in the past was very rigid with lists and you couldn't change the list and you couldn't change the sort order, and at some stage you couldn't even add new fields, you know, we're moving towards more flexibility, but maintaining that core of protecting your portfolio and your project data in an organized, structured way. We use WhatsApp and Teams and all these other things ourselves more today. But if I ask the people at PPO for the best idea they have for the product, and we do it on Teams, it takes me half an hour afterwards to go through all the comments and articulate and drag out of the free text the actual ideas and log them somewhere. So it's that hybrid that we're trying to move to, where we still have a very organized, structured data set which helps you maintain your portfolio data, support your reporting, but move to more intuitive user feel, look and feel, and those type of things. The widgets, the filtering, all those type of things we want to move through into the reporting. So the reporting is also not as structured and hard as it is today, but has that fluidity where I can, just build up a string of what I want to see and then run a report. And the widget could have multiple components. And if I wanted to change one of the filters, just change it there, not go back to the filter page, reset the filter, rerun the report, but do it more in-screen type. So that's where we're going, but we just have to take this step forward first. Okay, Lindy's been posting a lot of the content of the new stuff we've been doing, some of the stuff that's been there for a while, the avatars and those things, the promoting of the filters and those things that were coming out next week. And I've been answering, I think, all the questions that came up as they came up. So thank you to all of you that asked. If there's any other questions, I'm going to pause now and ask. I know all of you are going to run away in 3 minutes. Before I let everybody else ask any questions, we do have UK and US clients who couldn't make today's session. The UK has got an extended holiday for the Queen's Jubilee, and the US is a difficult time zone. So we're doing the same webinar at 5 o'clock on Monday, so after the weekend. If there's somebody in your team who you feel needs to be here or needs to see this, please let us know. We'll forward that invite. It is 5 o'clock, so unfortunately outside of the normal South African working hours, but we will also share the webinar. But if you feel like one of your colleagues should have been here now that you've seen this isn't here, let us know. They're more than welcome to join that 5 o'clock on Monday. And then for any of you who want an individual session with us around some of these features or stuff, you can reach out to me or to Taryn or to your success manager. We're more than willing to have a more deep dive session with a specific client who may want to understand more. Any questions before we wrap up? Okay, well, there's no questions being posted or asked. All you need to do now is go and think about, where do you want this deployed? Do you want it deployed straight on your live environment? Do you want us to employ it on your training environment and you guys play with it there? Ultimately, it will get deployed to all clients in that June deadline. I can't remember off the top of my head now that I sent to you on email, but we do want to give you this 5 to 6 weeks opportunity to play with it, look at it. If you do find something that doesn't work, we doubt you will. We've been using it for a long time ourselves, but let us know if there's a feature that you think we've missed or something. I think what you saw today is where we can go. The table widget, the Gantt chart widget, and obviously we're looking to grow and add on those type of things. Upcoming beta programs very quickly. So we're also releasing a BI API. So a lot of clients are doing more BI. We now have an API that we're releasing. We've selected 2 or 3 clients to work with us on this. What it means is that you'll be able to open up Power BI, Excel, PowerPoint, point to PPO's data source, use the API and build your own reports. So you could effectively build reports directly out of PowerPoint if you wanted to. Even individual users will have that ability if they wanted to do that. So we have the API that's there. It's available currently to all clients, but the BI API is going to give a lot more functionality, and some of the clients that have done BI have found it quite technically difficult to do, and we're making that simpler as well. So if that is something you're interested in, put your hand up, let us know. I think the week after next, we're actually sitting with 1 or 2 of the demo clients on that, but giving you a lot more flexibility and also pushing some of that into the hands of the users as well. Okay, I'm going to stick around for a minute or 2. I know some of you might need to drop off. Thanks for the comments and the good support that I see on the side here. Hello, Nancy. I haven't spoken to you for ages. Those of you that do want to ask questions, you're more than welcome to pop us an email or stick around for a minute or 2. We're happy to take any questions, and then we'll be reaching out to all of you shortly to ask you how you want us to deploy this or where you want us to deploy this. Okay. Cheers, Cobus. Michael, you're on mute.
Thanks, Guy. That was great. Yeah, looking forward to testing with the team. Amanda and I'll have a chat in a few minutes as to our approach, but probably the training instance first, and then we'll evangelize to the rest of the EPO.
Cool. Let us know. I think you've also got a chat with Delian, so if you've got any additional questions, shout. Happy to answer it. Thanks, Michael. Taryn, are you going to stop the recording?
Oh, yes, I will.
It's found by, sorry, I I was bogged down in another meeting. I missed most of it. I was able to watch it in one eye, but I saw there was a recording going. Will I be able to access the recording to just catch up the bits that I've missed?
Hey, Fon, good to see you again. Yeah, we'll share the recording with you. There is also another session Monday, 5 o'clock, if that suits you better. We can forward that invite to you in the meantime. Even if you can't make it, we'll just forward it to you, but we'll also share the recording. So an option to see it again. We'll do it better and faster next time. It'll be the second time we do it. But yeah, join us on Monday at 5, or we'll share the recording with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks, Guy.
No problem. Okay, if there's no other questions, I see that most of the people left here are PPO people. Thanks all you PPO staff for joining. Taryn, I think if you're comfortable, we can probably shut it down.
Okay, thanks. I will.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Okay.
Thanks, Marina.
Thanks, everyone.
Pleasure, Guy.
Cheers.
Wow. Bye.